In today's video, we want to highlight things in our Swiss apartment that just make sense. We live in a new multi-family apartment building outside of Zurich that we think is a middle-range apartment. It's certainly not a lakeside luxury condo, but also not a budget apartment. I'm Swiss American, and having lived in both countries in multiple apartments, so I feel like I have a bit of perspective on what stands out as being special. Of course, all of these things are not going to be in every Swiss apartment, nor are they necessarily uniquely Swiss. I'm sure they exist in other countries. This building has the minergie certification. It's a building standard focused on comfort, energy efficiency, and value retention that around 50,000 buildings have in Switzerland. I do believe that generally Swiss apartments are of higher quality than other countries, and the Swiss don't mind spending money for quality of life. So let's get started. I'll start in the kitchen. Something that immediately stands out is that refrigerators here are seamlessly built into the cabinetry. You won't find a giant stainless steel multi-door fridge here. It really keeps a streamlined view from the ceiling all the way to the floor. Another thing common in Swiss kitchen are induction cooktops. They look like electric stovetops, but heat incredibly fast, stay cool to the touch, and are much more energy efficient. Sometimes people think you will need some kind of special pan for induction, which is not true. Any stainless steel or cast iron will work. And lastly, a really funny thing that really makes it clear that this is a Swiss kitchen, the dishwasher has a fondue and raclette setting. And having all of the labels in German, French, Italian, and English clearly makes this a Swiss kitchen. The next category that just makes sense is temperature control. Air conditioning is incredibly rare in Swiss homes. Luckily, most windows I've seen in Switzerland have multiple ways you can open them, either fully open or tilted at the top to let in a little bit of air. Funny enough, our leases have always had recommendations for the amount of time you should leave your windows open to allow for adequate ventilation. To block out light, most apartments will have built-in blinds on the outside. You often see ones that you have to crank by hand, but luckily ours are electric. And when they close, it's basically blackout. On the inside, you'll commonly find built-in tracks to hang curtains. It's nice that it makes it really easy to hang curtains, but also doesn't look strange if you choose not to. So what about heating in the winter? Heated floors are not an extravagant luxury like perhaps in the US and fairly common in Switzerland. Each room has independent control, so you can keep each room at its ideal temperature. For example, our guest room remains off until we actually have guests. I personally love stepping out of the shower onto a warm tile floor in winter. Moving now onto storage. People talk a lot about Switzerland's bunkers, and today many of them in older homes are used as storage cellars. In most new builds, like our apartment, there will be a basement with dedicated rooms or spaces for each tenant. We use ours to store seasonal items like our winter tires and Christmas decorations. While we're down here, Swiss people often like to hang their clothes. We have a dedicated drying room with a dehumidifier that is great for hang drying bed or table linens. And lastly down here is the parking garage. Switzerland is a tiny country, so instead of putting all the parking spots outside, they are often underground. It's not uncommon at all for apartments here to have dedicated underground parking, even if they aren't in the middle of an urban center. To tie together storage and parking, the last thing to highlight is our big bike room. Cycling is really popular for both sport as well as transportation for all ages. Our final category is waste. When moving to Switzerland, garbage and recycling can be understandably overwhelming. Everything needs to be cleaned, sorted, and deposited in different locations on different days. Something I think makes sense here is keeping our trash hidden. We have a built-in trash can under the sink that is special trash bags you buy at the grocery store fit into. It's nice not having a visible trash can out in the middle of the kitchen. But that's not where keeping it out of sight ends. When the bag is full, we drop it in these special locked chutes and they are all stored underground. Then, once a week, a garbage truck comes around and they hoist all the trash out at once. It's strangely fun to watch. I don't think this is very common here, but we have a dedicated room where we can put our cardboard, paper, and compost. In our last apartment, you'd have to remember to take each one out on their specific day to be picked up. But being out of town or forgetting to take it out one week would mean you'd have to store it for yet another week. And lastly, when it comes to waste, most toilets here have 2 flush settings to save water. In fact, dual flush toilets can conserve more than half the water of a traditional toilet. The style and power of the toilets also means that I've never seen a toilet get clogged. Related to this is just one last thing that makes sense in Switzerland. Dog waste bags are provided everywhere. Here, you have no excuse not to pick it up. So those are some of the things that we think just make sense in our apartment. Let us know down in the comments what you think makes sense in your apartment that maybe we're missing out on, or what you wish you had in your home.